Now, in this lesson we're going to take a look at CSS3 Gradients. We're going to talk about what they are, how to apply them, and the compatibility amongst browsers. Now we'll start off with just a basic HTML page. We give it a title here, Gradients, and we link to our style sheet, so style.css, and in the body we just create a div, an empty div, given the ID of box. Okay, and that's all we're going to do in the HTML, so we'll head on over to the CSS style sheet and we will see what we have here. So we have some basic styles for the box. We give it a width, we give it a height, and just the center on the page, then we give it a margin of 40 pixels from the top and auto left and right. So now we get into the syntax of the gradients. Now I suppose the first thing to look at is probably the fallback options. I suppose we'll talk a little bit about what a gradient is to begin with. Basically a gradient is a background image with no intrinsic dimensions. You define a gradient by specifying background image, then a starting point for the gradient, whether it's to be the top, bottom, left, right, followed and separated by commas, followed by a comma and the particular colour value you like, and then the colour value that the first colour is to run into. This probably sounds a bit more complicated than it actually is, so we'll get straight into the syntax and take a look. We set up a fallback option basically for browsers that don't support older browsers and maybe some mobile browsers. Fallback option is basically you just specify a background colour, that if the gradient doesn't work you have a colour to fall back on, which would normally be one of the colours from the gradients. The second fallback option is a background image, which is really the old way of doing it. And the old way of doing gradients where you use a gradient image that previously created in Photoshop or similar software. Now, this image will not be loaded by the browser if the code underneath is interpreted properly. So there's pros and cons to creating this, but it might be just to completely cover all angles. Might be no harm to do it, but we won't get too bogged down in that now. So we'll take a look at the syntax for the actual gradient. What we have here is gradient specified for 4 browsers. Now the reason we have it specified 4 times, it's pretty much the same thing 4 times, except for the prefixes at the start of the linear gradient declaration, which is WebKit for Safari and Chrome, Moz for Firefox, MS for Microsoft Internet Explorer, and O for the Opera web browser. Now, the reason we need these is because browsers don't fully support gradients with just this command, which is what it should be. So, I mean, the main syntax is you specify background image, followed by linear gradient, open parentheses, then left to specify this is going to start from the left, your first colour, and your second colour, which your first will run into your second. So this alone, like I said, will not work, so for the purpose of this tutorial, we work in Chrome, WebKit browser. So we say left, red, black. So we'll jump over to the browser and take a look at that. Take a look at it in Chrome. Let's close them off. So let's go back to Dreamweaver here now, and we will see that we have a background image specified, WebKit linear gradient, starting from the left, starting with red, blending to black. And pretty much that's what we have. Now, the starting point, I suppose, we will look at the parameters that would be passed to this, and the first one is the starting point. So that can be specified as top. Be specified as bottom. Or, you guessed it, be specified as right. Now, this can also be specified in degrees. So if we were to say 45 degrees, for example, start in the bottom left, 45 degrees. We could say 180 degrees, which is a right to left, and we could say 90 degrees, which should be bottom to top. Okay, so that's the first parameter being passed. Let me just change this back to top. Now, second parameters are the actual colour values. They can be white. So we have white to black. It can also be a hex value. We say, we'll just say white again. Won't change there, just to demonstrate that it does take colour values, and that will clearly show you. Green, we have from green to black there. Right, they're really the main parameters. There's not a huge amount to gradients. It's just those three parameters really: the starting point, starting colour, and finishing colour. Colour stops would be the next thing to look at, and basically what a colour stop is you can put in as many colours as you like, which are separated by commas. So, for example, I put in another colour stop here, white. Okay, we seem to have a problem. Spelled. Right, and then we have three colours. Green, the black, the white. It's quite ugly looking, but you get the point. I could put in a red. Now we have four colours. And red starting from the left. And so you get the idea of how simplistic it is to apply these gradients. It should be covered with most browsers by putting in the prefixes. So far, just to demonstrate the differences in the browsers, we have 4 different values, one for each browser. So each one will display a different gradient in the respective browsers. So just to demonstrate that, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the colours of the rainbow for the Firefox browser. So as the browser cascades down the style sheet, it will hit this one first. But since Firefox is not a WebKit browser, it will be ignored. It will move on to the next one. You'll see Moz. Firefox is a Mozilla browser, so this is the gradient that will be served up. I will demonstrate that now. Opening here with Firefox. Of course, Firefox needs to be open for some reason before I can open the gradient. Just close that. Now, this is the colour of the rainbow. So, there's Chrome and there's Firefox. And we will go back to Dreamweaver and just take a look at the next in line, which is Internet Explorer. I'm working on a Mac here, so I can't display that. You just take it from me that it works. And we will take a look at Opera, which has different color values. With Opera, we should see a gradient starting with white, yep, and ending in blue. And now, just to demonstrate that, I'll change that value to black, ending in blue. Okay, so we've covered the fallbacks, which is here. We've covered the different declarations for the different browsers, WebKit, Moz, Microsoft and Opera. We've covered what gradients are, as in the background images. They can be applied to any element. We've covered the parameters that are passed to the linear gradient declaration, which are starting point and your colour stops. And I suppose the last thing to cover is this line here, which I have marked as future proofing. Basically what this means is that when the time comes when the browsers no longer need WebKit, Mozilla, MSRO, when they no longer need the prefixes, this will be the line of code it will need. If the browser no longer needs WebKit, Moz, MSRO, it will ignore all these. So as it cascades down, it will ignore these, but it will hit this. And like I say, when the time comes that just this line is supported, this is what will be served up. Now typically, when you create a gradient, typically when you create a gradient, all these values will be the same. So that the same gradient is displayed across all browsers. Just to demonstrate that, save this off now and we will just refresh, although that is what this stole me copy from, so that's not going to change. And it's Chrome, and we haven't looked at Safari, so just to demonstrate that everything is present and correct, there we have it. So now, just another quick recap. Fallbacks, the declaration, the parameters passed, the different browser prefixes, and of course future proofing. So that wraps up CSS3 Gradients, and we will see you in the next tutorial. Thank you.